Hey everyone, what's going on? Thanks for tuning in to Relevant Jukebox, and today we're going to talk about this new Code Orange album, Underneath. Now, there was once a period of time where I would say that Code Orange had the freshest sound in hardcore. It came through the releases of a handful of EPs, most notably Cycles in 2011, and for a hardcore band, all their music came off kind of strange, pretty unpredictable, and had a fearless blend of raw emotion that could only come from people in their mid-teens. And at the time, they were one of the few bands that were taking elements of power violence and applying a different songwriting style approach to them that was going against the really uninspired blueprint that you heard a lot of bands using at the time. They also brought in elements of shoegaze, drone music, and post-rock into the fold. Now, the band doesn't necessarily like to stick within one sound, and they continue to change and evolve and distance themselves, ironically enough, from themselves on their album I Am King. They did keep things strange with a lot of their songwriting quirks, adding in some horror-like elements, but as a whole, everything just kind of became more formulaic and predictable in my opinion. Their original sound and approach almost was entirely wiped away and was swapped out for a songwriting approach that was completely centered around a breakdown, which also carried over onto their last album, Forever. So, overall, going into a new record, I was hoping that they would go back to maybe a more unpredictable state of being. Underneath does share a lot of stylistic qualities with their previous two records, but with a lot of improvements, in my opinion, and they're pulling influence heavily from industrial music on here, which is really cool. The extremely cold, icy, and synthetic vibes that are laced into this record make it feel like it was concocted in a lab out of Resident Evil. And a lot of those horror-like elements have been turned up a lot more on here, which is really great. And this time, they're blended in so well that it almost starts to blur the lines. One huge standout on this record was Cold Metal Place, and is my favorite example of how all of this comes together and works really well on one track. I love that really strange meltdown that happens halfway through the song. I think this might be the first time I can recall in this style of hardcore where the aesthetics have bled over and become almost more electronic. And when that meltdown kind of fizzles out, it does bring you into a breakdown, but this one doesn't feel cheaply sold or anything. It really fits perfectly. And I guess you could say the same about the track Back Inside the Glass. Now, a lot of those creepy elements are at their creepiest on this record. There are parts where it sounds like people are in distress. There's also some maniacal laughing, and they're even able to work in some whispering on this record. Yes, you heard that right. There are whispers on the track You and You Alone, and it actually works really well. As you might expect, this record is chock full of breakdowns once again, but they do have a lot of added flavor into the mix with a lot of these weird screeches. Sometimes they sound like they're coming from guitars, like on the track Swallowing the Rabbit Hole, and other times they are completely digital based on the track Fear. Now, one thing that didn't really work for me too well on spots in this record was where they have the track glitch out entirely and make a pause. And I think the intention there was to make it seem like something was going to be popping out at you, but it just didn't really work for me. It kind of became distracting. And there are a handful of spots on this album where they do let the instrumentation breathe a little bit, and it puts out a really uneasy atmosphere. Overall, I wish they explored that a little bit more to break up a lot of this record, because one thing that really stops my enjoyment of it, really kneecaps it overall for me, was the tracks on here that have those really soaring sung choruses, because a lot of the singing on this record just sounds horrendous, especially on the lead single Underneath. Also though, on tracks like A Silver, Autumn and Concubine, and Who I Am. I don't really know how to describe it, honestly. It just does not sound good. It's giving off this kind of vulnerable, angsty Linkin Park kind of vibe, and I just cannot get down with it whatsoever. So I'm kind of down the middle with this record, even though there is a lot to celebrate and aspects of it that I enjoyed quite a bit. For one, it is heavy as hell at times, and the production on this record is absolutely pristine. Everything sounds so well balanced and recorded on here, and the way that they're applying modern production techniques into the fold on this record here is something to celebrate, because I think, it could push other bands to make their records a little heavier. Picture taking a hardcore band in 1080p and giving them a 4K restoration. I also really like how they continue to add in a lot of those stranger elements into the fold to keep it feeling like a Code Orange release. And I guess overall, you could argue they still have potentially the freshest sound in hardcore right now because of all that stuff. But overall, this album is a little bit bloated and long-winded, I do think, and, you know, a lot of these tracks end up paling in comparison to others, become kind of forgettable. And I think overall, these like sing-along type soaring choruses are not something that this band should explore whatsoever. And with that being said, I'm feeling a 7 over here on Underneath. There are actually a lot of cool vinyl variants to choose from if you're interested in picking up this record. I'm gonna have links down below to Code Orange's merch website. There was a blood and human flesh coloring color pressing that has sold out by now, but unfortunately due to the virus spreading and them having to cancel their tour for this record, they did put up for sale the tour exclusive metallic and white split color vinyl. There's also a picture disc that you can grab, and there is a translucent galaxy vinyl, so lots of cool stuff to sift through on there. And if you listen to this new Code Orange record, what did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, thank you for watching. If you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you drop a like down below. And if you want more content from me, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Peace.